Welcome to Book Rising, a podcast by the Radical Books Collective.
Welcome back to Book Rising and our series on radical publishing futures. I'm Meg Arenberg, and I'm here today with Michel Moushabeck, writer, editor, translator, musician, and of course, founder of Interlink Publishing based in Northampton, Massachusetts. Michel, thank you so much for taking the time to chat today.
It's great to be with you, Meg. You know, you guys are doing an amazing job. I really enjoy listening to your podcasts and the events and everything you and Bhakti and the other team members have done. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you so much. Interlink Publishing is celebrating 35 years this year, I understand. Congratulations.
Yes, thank you very much.
You've been publishing with a particularly internationalist focus since 1987 then, including fiction and translation, travel books and cultural guides, history and politics, and children's books from around the world. And you know that we're big fans of your award-winning cookbooks. Could you just start by telling us a bit of your own biography, how you got started in publishing and what your vision was behind Interlink?
Sure. You know, I was straight out of college when I started Interlink, and I had absolutely no idea of how a book is edited, published, produced, designed, marketed, publicized, or, distributed. I was just a passionate lover of literature, and I was a radical student wanting to make a difference. So I came from a literary family. My grandparents' house in the old city of Jerusalem was where all the Palestinian literati of the time gathered. But my parents, however, after experiencing multiple exiles, they thought that I would go to America and study to become a successful banker or investment banker or a highly paid accountant. So that did not happen. I ended up becoming a publisher and an editor. As a Palestinian and a young student activist, coming to America from war-torn Beirut was quite a life-changing and eye-opening experience for me. I quickly embraced the values, American values of freedom and the First Amendment and democracy and civil liberties and education and free speech and all that stuff. But I was really disappointed to learn how little people in America knew about where I came from. And I got really tired of having to explain to people that I come from Palestine, not Pakistan. And I was, shocked really by their one-sided view of the so-called Arab-Israeli conflict, which was not accepting of Palestinian history and narrative. I was also surprised, generally speaking, to find out how little people I hung out with knew about other cultures and literatures and how little exposure they've had to Middle Eastern literature, African literature, Latin American, literature. So it was really at that time when I decided to change the course of my life and become a publisher. So that's when I founded Interlink. I was 20-something with a big idea, to bring the world closer to American readers in the hopes that this will bring readers of the world closer to each other through literature. So that's kind of the concept behind Interlink. And the goal was, and still is, to commission, to publish, to promote books that foster a better understanding and appreciation of other people and other cultures. So that's what happened in 1987, 35 years ago, in Brooklyn, New York. Now we're based in Northampton, Massachusetts. So we remain fiercely independent. And as you said, we specialize in literature and translation. We do history, politics, memoirs, biographies, multicultural children's books. But as you also mentioned, that we are really best known for our award-winning cookbooks, which also tend to be as radical as everything else that we publish.
Well, can I ask you to elaborate a little bit on that? I mean, why cookbooks? I mean, I know you've had a few different benefit projects. The Soup for Syria book and the Immigrant Cookbook have both donated parts of the profits to benefit UNHCR and the ACLU's Immigrant Rights Project, for instance. Perhaps there are others in that category. But what about cookbooks in particular? What does it afford as a genre?
I can tell you, when I first started Interlink and I was passionate about literature and translation, I very, very quickly realized that I was not going to be able to make a living and raise a family on the income that, fiction is going to generate for me. Of course, we've had support from, they were used in comparative literature classes and so on and so forth, but it was very hard to get Americans to take it on a novel written by somebody from the Arab world or Africa or whatever, or somebody whose name they would have a hard time pronouncing. So I realized this early on, and cookbooks is one area that really saved the day, and it really, in a way, funds a lot of the projects that we're passionate about, but they're not money-making projects. So, and we found really the right business model and the right formula for cookbooks, because we're also foodies and we're passionate about food. And when it comes to cookbooks, they all double as cultural guides. This is the criteria that we use. And this is what really sets us apart from mainstream cookbook publishers. We look for great writing, and as well as amazing recipes and stunning photography. So our cookbooks are not just straight cookbooks. They tell you more about the traditions and the customs in a country, the culinary history, they have stories and anecdotes and tidbits about the culture and so on, and much more. So that's why they also tend to be radical. And I'll give you an example. For example, Judy Kalla's Palestine on a Plate was the very first cookbook to use Palestine in the title. Mm-hmm. Sent it to many publishers before it came to us, and everybody rejected it because they wanted to call it so-called a Middle Eastern cookbook, but they didn't want to use the word Palestine. We published it, Palestine on a Plate. We followed it up by another second cookbook from the same author called Baladi Palestine, which is my homeland, Palestine. You had Durkhanai Ayubi, and you interviewed her in your last event, the cookbook, Radical Cookbook.
Incredible woman.
What an amazing, brilliant thinker and writer and speaker. Her cookbook, Parwana, is one of my favorite cookbooks, and it also has all the ingredients that I just talked about. It's a love letter to Pakistan, to Afghanistan, and it tells a beautifully written immigrant story, really, in a sense. So you talked about our immigrant cookbook. Our immigrant cookbook came out of an idea when Donald Trump was elected, and it was an antidote to all the hateful and anti-immigrant rhetoric that he was spewing at us, So we decided, and we got a lot of help. It's a cookbook. It's called the Immigrant Cookbook that Make America Great. And there are contributions from 80 immigrant chefs, very famous immigrant chefs, who really, we wanted to showcase the contributions of immigrant chefs in America. And as you said, we donated a portion of the proceeds to the ACLU's Immigrants' Rights Project. And the same with Soup for Syria. That same idea also, we donated over $500,000 for food and medical relief of Syrian refugees. So while we are passionate about food, we also do one humanitarian cookbook a year. And this year, later in the year, we're publishing a cookbook called Forever Beirut, and recipes and stories from the heart of Lebanon. And this is a book also, we will be supporting the Lebanese Food Bank, because in the aftermath of the August 2020 blast that devastated Beirut, the Lebanese Food Bank has done a tremendous job in feeding the Lebanese and people in need. And that's what we're supporting with this new cookbook.
Beautiful. Do you have any sense, maybe this is a hard question to answer, but do you have a sense whether these cookbooks become a kind of bridge or a way in for readers to other genres? I mean, you mentioned that literature and translation is a hard sell, but I wonder if someone who loves your cookbooks finds their way there.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Meg, to think that way. Because first, the idea behind Interlink is that if you genuinely would like a non-Western experience and you would like to learn about another culture, we give you the fiction from leading novelists in that country. We give you the history written, by people in that country, but we also give you a travel guide so that you can go there, and we also give you the cookbook. So it's kind of an overall, experience that we strive to give in our publishing program. But you're also right about many, many people who discover our cookbooks and discover Interlink come back to us and order a lot of our fiction. And I want to say something about fiction and translation. Yes, it is very hard to publish. There is no doubt. It is expensive to translate. There is not a level playing field. It's hard to bring in authors from, the Middle East or Africa or Latin America to promote them and tour them here in the United States. But if you persevere, I think it pays off. And one example was that a couple of years ago, there was an article in the New Yorker. The headline of the article was the best 10 novels from the Arab world. And out of those 10 novels, 6 of them were Interlink titles that we published 25 years ago. So it's kind of better late than never type of thing. Amazing. So those novels that I said in the first year would sell 500 copies, now 35 years on, some of them have sold 30 and 40,000 copies and are classics and being used constantly by professors in comparative literature classes and Middle East history, women's history, African studies, and so on and so forth. So yes, it's finally happening.
And is that a change in your readers as well? I mean, do you think that's part of a broader cultural change?
We're definitely experiencing a cultural change, and that has brought, and as a result of not only what Interlink is doing, there are a lot of great indie publishers who are doing similar things. And of course, organizations such as the Radical Book Collective that are really expanding the readership of a lot of great writers whose voices were unheard before in the West, and especially a lot of women writers from the Middle East and Africa and Latin America.
Well, it's certainly our hope that we're contributing to such an expansion. Has the shift to digital publishing changed the game for Interlink at all?
Yes and no. Digital publishing made life easier in some sense when it comes to the technology and to producing books. And, of course, the old days we used to typeset everything by hand. And I remember that very clearly with the first book that I published. But digital publishing is a double-edged sword, in the sense that, especially when it comes to ebooks, it's been quite challenging for us to digitize nearly 1,000 backlist titles. And we've also had to speed this up, especially during the pandemic, when a lot of people wanted ebooks because bookstores were shuttered, and so people were going online to find ebooks. And even though initially I have to admit I was not a huge fan of ebooks, and I was kind of late coming on board, we've expanded our ebooks in the last 2 years. And while the digitization of ebooks, we outsource the e-conversion of the ebooks, and that's the easy part of it. But when you get them back, it's like having to proofread 1,000 titles. Mm-hmm. And you are already stretched too thin and you are understaffed. It's a monumental job. So we do have an army of interns and helpers and others who are proofreading those books. And we have so far uploaded between 250 and 300 ebook titles of Interlink, and we're trying to do the rest as fast as we possibly can.
Yeah, I'm listening as you talk about how the pandemic made digitizing more urgent, and I'm thinking about other aspects of the pandemic's effect on publishing and bookselling. And one of the questions we've been asking guests in this series is how you, as a small publisher, tackle corporate giants like Amazon, who gained an even greater share of the market during that period.
Amazon is popular. It makes ordering easy for people, and it has super fast delivery. They discount books, and they carry everything. They carry all our titles, for example. So they're here to stay, and we have to live with the Amazons and Barnes and Nobles of this world. But my worry is that the bigger they get, the worse the terms they dictate to us will become. Mm. And there's no doubt that Amazon has helped us expand our reach, globally. There's no doubt about that. But I have to say that every opportunity I get, all of us, we encourage our readers to first go to their local indie bookshop, because it's so important for us to support indie bookshops the way they support us and hand sell our books, before deciding to go to Amazon. And if you can't find them at the indie bookshop, then you can go to our website, which will help us also enormously.
Yeah. Taking into account all of those factors, what in your mind would have to change for independent, radical, non-corporate publishing to thrive?
Most indie publishers I know are doing fairly well. It's healthy. We've seen over the past few years major corporations involved in consolidations and mergers and acquisitions, and we're now experiencing a really dangerous trend in the industry that publishing is moving towards bigger, faster, and more profits for large publishing houses. But this is, in a way, an opportunity for indie publishers. And indie publishers who are successful, in my view, have two things in common. One is passion, and passion inspires people. And if you're passionate about what you do, if you're not passionate, you're going to really lose your authors, you're going to lose your staff, you're going to lose the reviewers you pitch your books to, you're going to lose international partners who license your books, and ultimately you will lose your readers. So passion is the most important ingredient, and believe me, I see so much passion among my colleagues who are, indie publishers. It's really truly amazing what they're doing. The other thing is our ability to adapt quickly to changes in the marketplace and readers' tastes. And by definition, indie publishers are independent. It means you're on your own. It's no corporate investments funding you, no banks to bail you out, and no nonprofit fundraising campaigns to get you out of trouble in difficult times. So you either adapt quickly or you perish. Mm-hmm. This is exactly what really happened to us during the pandemic. Everything was going smoothly and good, and all of a sudden, boom, it's there. Because bookstores shuttered, everybody canceled their orders for our spring and summer list, which was just coming off the press. International trade came to a complete halt. And what are we to do? And we still had staff, we needed to pay salaries and so on. So we really had to move very, very quickly and mobilize everybody and think outside the box. What are we going to do at this point? And that's what we did. We changed our business model and focused more on direct-to-consumer sales. I started writing a weekly newsletter that resonated with a lot of people. And that newsletter sometimes talked about books, but sometimes it was political commentaries and commentaries about the times and all. And people started really forwarding my newsletter to colleagues and friends and so on. Now we expanded our email list to over 40,000 subscribers who read our newsletter every week. And of course, we always talk about books and authors we are excited about. And that helped us enormously, and of course, Zoom, had a role to play there. We were able to bring in those authors that we always said we couldn't afford to bring to the US on tour. So we now were able to get them on Zoom. And that in and of itself also, it's something that was not done before and was, our readers were very interested in that. So yeah, this is business models of traditional mainstream publishers do not work for indies. So indie publishers have really to devise their own business models and adapt them and customize them to fit their own needs and their own readership. But there is a final point that I would like to make about what indie publishers, you asked, what do they need to continue to do? And I would say that the world we live in is a diverse one, and the world is changing. So publishing needs to accurately reflect the world as it is. From the books we publish, to the staff we hire, to the partners we choose to work with. Diversity in publishing is really, really important. And that's where, it's going to move us all forward. And indie publishers have the power to shape culture, and in a way, we serve as gatekeepers as we decide what gets published, which stories get amplified, which ones get shut out. So it's important that diverse voices are truly represented and amplified. And this not only contributes to making our book community more inclusive, but it really contributes to making the world a better place. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. As you know, we'll be holding a Radical Books collective book club on Joumana Haddad's The Book of Queens in May.
I'm thrilled about that.
And I was wondering if you could give our readers a little teaser about that novel.
Yes, this is one of the novels we're publishing this spring that I'm really, really excited about. It's and I love Joumana Haddad's work. She's a leading Lebanese writer. She's as feisty as they get. She's a journalist. She's a human rights activist, and her work has been translated into many languages. And we're thrilled to have her as part of the Interlink family. She's The Book of Queens is a family saga. It's a family saga that spans 4 generations of women caught up in the tragic whirlwind of turf wars and suffering in the Middle East. It starts with the Armenian genocides, and then the Israeli occupation of Palestine, and to modern day civil wars in Syria, and the struggles between Christians and Muslims that we're facing, that the Middle East is facing today. So it tells the story of these 4 women that belong to the same, tree branches, or branches of the same tree, I should say. And each one of them has a very deep story to tell. But there's one thing in common between all the 4 women, is that their unwavering power and resilience in the face of adversaries and adversities of being a woman in a war-torn region. And so it really is, it's beautifully written, but it's also intense, I should say. And it also challenges the systematic abuse of religious and political power. It's really a great read. It's a book of history and heritage and loyalty and religion and feminism and, all combined. So I can't praise it enough.
I can't wait. Are there any other radical titles from Interlink that we should all be reading right away?
There are books that are forthcoming and that I'm thrilled about in every category that we publish under. But I will, depending on how much time we have, I will quickly tell you about one more title.
Perfect.
And that I'm really, an author that I love. Her name is Sefi Atta, and her latest book is called The Bad Immigrant. And Sefi Atta is an award-winning Nigerian author. We've published all her works, and this is her 5th novel. Her very first novel, Everything Good Will Come, won the Wallace Soyinka Prize for African Literature. And that blew me away when I got it unsolicited early on. And her latest novel, Swallow, was released last October as a Netflix original movie. So I also recommend you watching this movie. So her latest novel, it's a brilliant account of again an immigrant family's struggle and the lessons learned about diversity in America. It tells the story of a modern day Nigerian family that wins the visa lottery to come to America and pursue their American dream. And it examines the culture clash faced by immigrants trying to assimilate while at the same time still preserving their identities. And it is humorous, it is intelligent, it's unfiltered, it's satirical, and I found it really very, very, not only compelling and compassionate, you know. And so I think for readers who have never read Sefi Atta, I think it's really, it's a good time to start, because she's a novelist that I love and I highly recommend and I cherish, and I think she's going to go places.
Oh, I am a fan of Sefi Atta as well. So very much looking forward to that title. Thank you for these recommendations. Michel, thank you so much for taking this time to chat with me. It's been wonderful to talk to you.
Thank you so much, Meg, and thank you all for all that you do.